So far we've done measurements on this. That side is at 9 1/4. This side is at 8 3/4. We're going to take this and spin this into position. We could be as much of 1/8 of an inch out. On your cribbing itself, you'll want to cross crib. That's within 1/8 of an inch. That's pretty close to what Ford says is acceptable on these old chassis. And we're pretty close to being ready for Logan to come in here and just start cutting those spot welds. All right, today we are moving forward on our 65 Ranchero. I will be working today on trying to get this thing set up correctly for us to put the frame rail in the car. What I mean by that is leveling out the chassis, making sure everything is sitting to where it's supposed to be sitting, and show you guys how to do much the same thing if you want to attempt to scab in a frame rail like we're doing today. And why, but I like saying scab today. It's just a lot of fun. Right after the break.
Restoration of a classic Ford is a journey of discovery. Let AutoCrafters help you with yours. We offer quality parts for Falcon, Fairlane, F-Series, Galaxy, Maverick, and Pinto. Contact us today.
All right, so one of the first things you're going to want to do is you're going to do measurements for position of the chassis. And sometimes that can be problematic if your floor is not exceptionally level. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to measure at the 4 mounting points that Ford used for setting up the frame rails on the car. I'm going to measure this hole, that hole on the other side over there, this on the other side of the chassis, and then the 2 holes that are inside that are on the front frame rails to see what level is on the chassis. There are other mounting points that you can measure, but what I will probably do is try to find a spot like in here that I can do another measurement and then take one at the back of the chassis. So far we've done measurements on this. That side is at 9 1/4. This side is at 8 3/4. That is officially, according to Ford, outside of what they like to see for frame alignment. Now I don't know if we have a real frame problem here or if we have a floor problem. So what I'm going to try to do is I'm going to try to level the vehicle up to where it's sitting level on the ground. I'll go grab myself a level and try to take the chassis and level the chassis up. I'm going to start in an area that I know is fairly level, and that's in the back window of our 65 Ranchero here. So I'm going to go grab a level and then try to start leveling it up on the 4 jack stands that we already have underneath it. We do have the back end hanging in the wind right now. That will be taken care of as soon as we get the main central section of this chassis to where I'm comfortable with how level it is sitting. All right, so what I got going on is I'm using trailer jack stands. These are what you would use if you're doing a travel trailer going somewhere and you're trying to level it up on uneven ground. They work pretty darn good for this activity though, because what we want to be able to do is to use these to slowly jack the chassis up into the air at different corners. We're fairly stable at 4 corners, but this corner is low. So in order to get it up where we want it to be so that it's sitting correctly, we're going to take this and spin this into position. Now I've got it on some cribbing on the ground. And in a second here, I'll go up and take a look at what my level is telling me. All right, I'm going to go up top and take a look. We're still out a little bit. Now what can start to happen in these instances is the chassis will not be jacked up. You'll actually see that it lifts a corner on the car. That'll tell you, if that happens, that you may have a frame issue on the car. Now, I heard a little bit of a change in pitch on the jack stand on that side of the car on the back. That tells me that we are starting to relieve pressure on that jack stand, and I don't want that to happen. So I'm going to leave this one alone and then start looking at everything and checking my level up top. And I'm going to also then lay my level on the door here. Now, I have gone and set that side up using the jack stand. This side is now right on 9 inches, so we are dead level. We could be as much of 1/8 of an inch out with what Ford said in their assembly managing. Let go of it, Logan. So we know now that we are dead level. So now we're going to need to move toward the back of the car and work on making sure that we keep the back end of the car level for when we pull the frame rail out. And that's going to require us to cut up some cribbing. So Logan's going to go out and take care of cutting up the cribbing while I sit in here and get comfortable doing almost nothing. All right, so what I'm going to talk a little bit about now is cribbing before we finish the cribbing up here. I want to go into this just a little bit. These jack stands are really pretty good at about this level. If you go much higher than this, they get really unstable and they tend to want to wobble out. You'll also want to make sure when you're using these that the cup is centered up on your work. It's real easy as you're spinning these up for the cup to kind of walk off center. If it walks off center, it can cause a problem. On your cribbing itself, you'll want to cross crib, and what I mean by that is 4x4s that in cut, in cut, in cut. That'll give you a nice crib setup so that you're not going to have to possibly fall out from underneath you. It's basically, as one of the kids that's working with us today said, Jenga. I don't want anybody to play Jenga while I'm under there though. So basically right now we just got 2 more sets of cribbing to go in. I'll show you those after we get those in and done. But for now, we're pretty close to where we need to be on our cribbing. And then I'll go in and do another measurement out here at the very back of the car on the underside of that floor pan to check it out. So, moving on to there. All right, so I've got all my cribbing in on this side. This is pretty much how I want to set this up. I'm going to have to remove the rubber bumper from the driver's side and set it up in the same manner. And then I should be good to go on cribbing. Now, what I want to be able to do with this is actually make sure that the back end of this car is sitting level when we're putting the frame rail in, because I want that frame rail to sit where it should sit. This gives me an opportunity to level the chassis a little bit because we won't have a frame on this side, and we can actually jack it up a little bit if we need to make it more even with the other side of the car. The danger in that is the concrete may not be perfectly level back here and we could have a problem. But according to Ford, as long as we are within 1/8 of an inch per side, we're good to go. All right, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go take a measurement across the back of the car and see what we got there. Ooh, all right. So now what I'm doing is I don't want to measure off of my stands here where the bumpers mount because those can be a little variable, but the floor is the floor and it's going to be what it is. So what I've done is I've put my tape measure on the ground flat and up into the cavity at the very top right next to the mount. With that, that's going to give me a measurement. Now on this side, we are at 26 5/8. I'm going to move it over to the other side of the vehicle. And we are at, in roughly the same spot, we're at 26 1/2. Now I like that. That's within 1/8 of an inch. That's pretty close to what Ford says is acceptable on these old chassis when they were being built. So I would be okay with this. Will we go in and try to make that a little better? Maybe, maybe not. I may just leave it right where it is. And we're pretty close to being ready for Logan to come in here and just start cutting those spot welds. Right, 65 frame rail is now cribbed into position so we can cut that sucker out of here. That'll be coming to you next week. Logan will be going through and cutting out all those little spot welds, and we'll be showing you how to set up the frame rail and put it in. I took a class at Finish Masters in Augusta recently to learn how to do that, so we now have a better knowledge of how to put a frame rail in a car, so hopefully that'll work out really well. Speaking of working out really well, why don't you look at our Patreon account. What that money does is it goes to support the kids, but what it really is this. If we have done anything to help you out on a consistent basis on Autorestomod or Manic Mechanic, why don't you put a little bit of money in there? The guys that have been going up next to me over here, or maybe over here, I'm never sure where Andrew's going to put it. These are the guys who put their money where their mouth is, and they are supporting us on a monthly basis, $10 and above. If you're at Super Nitro up there with Pat, you're throwing down some serious coin, and we do appreciate our guys who do that for us. This money is going to pay Andrew. It also goes to get pizzas and things for the kids to eat on Saturday, and to give the kids that come in here to work with us a little bit of money for helping out, because kids seem to operate a lot better under a cash idea anymore than learning. Learning isn't as important as cash. Subscribe to the channel. We're on our march to 100,000 subscribers. We should be there pretty darn quick. We are at 98,700 and something. So I'm hoping by mid-February we'll be there, but right now we're short. So please do me a favor and go out and support the channel as a subscriber. You get all the information on a weekly when we're putting these videos up, and we do try to put up a video twice a week, Manic Mechanic and Autorestomod. Finally, folks, you know where I'm going with this? Super thanks! That's right, ladies and gentlemen. Super thanks is your way to thank us. One time only. If you want to put some money toward us that way as well, there is that as an option. Probably the worst named thing that I've ever heard from YouTube, calling it a super thanks. But if you want to say thanks to us because our video helped you learn something that you didn't know or showed you something that gave you the courage to go out and do it yourself, please put a little bit of money in the kitty there. It's not that hard to do. Go ahead and take the time to do that. Finally, folks, do me a favor. Be kind to each other, love on each other, treat each other nice. You guys have a great week, and we'll see you on down the road. So our goal with this piece of car behind me is Power Tour. I can't even believe I'm admitting this. Power Tour for this car. We're gonna do Power Tour with it. Well, Logan will. He'll be driving this car on Power Tour because I don't know why. Because I opened my mouth and said it in front of Logan and his eyes lit up. So I'm like, well, there we go. We're not going to make it pretty. It's going to look like it looks now, but it will be on potentially on Power Tour. So after we get the frame rail in, it's pretty much downhill, on fire, and exploding at the bottom of the hill from here.